Hi, welcome to 8 Ways Legal Can Battle Burnout, presented by Link Squares, and you'll be chatting with Lon Marinelli and myself, Ashlyn Donahue, today. And so without any further ado, let's dig in. So first, Lon, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Ashlyn. Hi, everyone. I'm Lon Marinelli, the General Counsel of ConnectRN. I joined ConnectRN about a month ago, and before that, I was at HubSpot with Ashlyn, which is great. ConnectRN is a leading nurse community. We have a healthcare technology platform that provides access to work opportunities and vital resources that nurses need to help them with their career. I kind of refer to it as almost like a LinkedIn for nurses. And it's been a fantastic opportunity so far. Ashlyn, over to you.
That's great. Hi, my name is Ashlyn. I'm the Director of Legal here at Link Squares. If you're not familiar with Link Squares, we are a legal technology company with a contract lifecycle management system backed by Power AI in our contract repository. I'm, here largely supporting commercial transactions as well as some other practice areas. And as Lon noted, was at HubSpot with her prior to this. Should we get started?
Let's do it.
All right, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to start with an introduction, which we just went through. We're going to give a brief overview of what burnout is, and then some tactical ways to battle burnout, and then end with a toolkit for you all to take home, and any questions that you might have. Happy to answer them throughout. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in. We're looking for any and all open questions you might have, and happy to address them. So what is burnout? Burnout is it's a state of emotional, mental, and often physical exhaustion that can just be brought on by prolonged or repeated stress. So maybe you're feeling like you're burned out at work because you're working really long hours, or maybe you feel like you've had a really busy time and haven't had as much time to rest or recharge on the personal front. And so it's really just this state of feeling like you are no longer able to effectively do your job as efficiently or effectively as you maybe have in the past. And I know I can, for myself, say that there have been times in my career where I've noticed that and recognized that and had to step back and find ways to recharge and reset in those moments. And I thought it was a really interesting stat that was presented here. Was about 80% of in-house lawyers feel stressed or burned out in their roles, and 57% are open to finding new jobs. So this is a topical issue that's pertinent for many in-house legal professionals, and so really excited to be talking about that. Lon, anything, how has burnout impacted you, or things that you think about when you think about burnout?
Yeah, when I think about burnout, it's definitely, both like literally like burning the midnight oil, working so much to meet, the various deadlines that you have in house. But I also think burnout is kind of that feeling you get when, you're no longer excited about your work and, every email you get, you're like, oh my God, or, every interaction or every meeting, it's just, instead of feeling excited about it, you have this like sense of dread. And I've definitely felt like that in my past. And, I feel like I have been, using some of the strategies that we're going to be talking about today to help combat that burnout.
Yeah, and so in those moments, is there anything in particular that tipped you off or helped you notice that maybe it was time to start implementing these strategies?
I think just that, like, I felt like I was either yelling at my kids more often or, again, just not excited about my work. I mean, let's face it, I don't know, I'm sure all of us on this call are very, very excited about legal work and, legalese and contract negotiation and all of that stuff. But when you start to really just not want to do it, or it's taking you much longer to do things that normally, again, when you're excited about your work, interested about your work, you're able to do your work more efficiently. You're better to be around, you're engaging with your stakeholders, you're engaging, with your family better. I feel like when you're not doing that, that's when it's time to check yourself and try to figure out some strategies to help combat the burnout.
Yeah, that's one that definitely resonates with me. I feel like if things start to take longer, then maybe it's because I'm distracted, right? I'm not invested in that moment. And so what is pulling me away? And is it just that I'm feeling burnt out and I need to take a walk, grab a cup of coffee, do whatever it is that's going to help me get back in the zone? But that's one that I totally resonates with me. and appreciate you sharing that. Um, do you want to dive into some of the strategies, or do you want to anything else you want to share about burning out?
No, let's dive in.
All right, so taking back your time. Juan, you want to kick us off with some of these strategies and how you've used them?
Yeah, sure. So, as you can see here, I mean, I think one thing, especially in this new remote work, hybrid work, is the amount of Zoom meetings or non-essential or unnecessary meetings that we have. Before, when we were all in an office environment, I could just stop by Ashlyn's desk and ask her a question. Now, even if I just have one question, sometimes it's scheduling a 30-minute meeting with Ashlyn to address that question when, could that question have just been a Slack? Could it have been an email? And so really taking ownership over your calendar and trying to clear as many unnecessary or non-essential meetings, or just really questioning like whether or not you truly need to be in there, are for other people from your team or other people that you can get kind of a download from. I have really tried to take care of this. I do spend some time looking at my calendar, seeing, do I really need to be at that meeting, or what is the objective of this meeting? I think if you ask yourself like a really hard question of what the objective of the meeting is, sometimes the person who set up the meeting actually doesn't even know. They're just trying to get the group together so that they can discuss something that they think should happen, but you end up talking in circles and you leave the 30-minute meeting not even knowing what you were supposed to be talking about. So again, just like really being mindful about your meetings and ask yourself if they should be, could they be a Slack, could they be an email, like is there an agenda for it, and being strong enough to like take control of it and ask that question. Maybe if you're a little more junior on your team, you might not feel like you can take that control, but you can. Like I would definitely, definitely do that. Ashlyn, what else can you add here?
Yeah, so I totally agree. I think for me, so I have some younger children, and when I've gone out on parental leave, one of the things that I've done in advance of that is looking at my calendar and my meetings. And I think one of the things I took away from my last leave was really just that that should be an iterative process. It's not a one-time thing when I'm getting ready to step away for a period of time that I need to recheck in. Maybe we scheduled this because we had a task that we were working on together and we've wrapped that up and it just kind of lingered on the calendar. And I think that building in time, whether that's quarterly or biannually, whatever works for you, to check in and see like what reoccurring meetings do I have? Why am I in them? And like how many folks are on there and like should I be there as well? So there have been times where I've stepped in and said like there are 4 people from my team on this call. Why don't we all pool together and then decide one of us is going to attend and like report out. So just to save back that time in people's calendars so that they can focus on deep work or reshift their priorities elsewhere, I think is just so key. So I totally echo that.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
thing that if a lot of us have regular one-on-ones with either our team members or stakeholders within the business, typically I do try to protect the one-on-ones that I have with my team members. But sometimes when you have a one-on-one with somebody else in the business, but you already have a really fantastic relationship with that person, and or you may have just met last week, reaching out via Slack or email, like, hey, I know we have this meeting. I don't really have anything on my agenda, but if you have anything, obviously happy to meet. I would say 9 times out of 10, that person is like, oh my God, thank God you canceled. I could really use this time back for work. And so again, don't feel like you're going to be letting that person down, because I'm sure, yeah, again, 9 times out of 10, they'll probably really appreciate that time back. One of the fourth bullet here, consider a no meetings day. I know a lot of companies, including HubSpot, Twilio, probably a couple other companies out there have implemented kind of like a no meeting Friday, where it's one day across the business where folks are encouraged to not schedule meetings during that day so they can catch up on important items or really have like deep working time. I miss that at HubSpot. We don't have that here at my current company, but I may try to implement that either for my team or, across the company, because I do feel like it's a fantastic way to really take back your time and to focus, on some items that might need, more than just a 30-minute break in the meeting to, 30-minute break in your day to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the things that I took away from a prior colleague that they suggested was like, even if your company doesn't have those regularly scheduled blocks or encourage time that you're not scheduling meetings, to find the times that you want to intentionally book for yourself. And so one of the things I personally do just to start my week and close out my week is block an hour, hour and a half on Monday mornings and Friday afternoons, just to make sure that I'm taking that time to dive in, get what needs to be wrapped up at the beginning of the week, or get ready to head out for the weekend. And so finding that space as well, even if it's not a formal policy or something that your company does, I think really can help. It's all about being intentional with managing your own calendar personally.
Yeah. And similarly, I have two kids, and so I basically try not to have meetings before 9:30. Obviously, there's sometimes, where I do need to have a meeting before that because somebody else's schedule like requires that. But every weekday, I have a block from essentially 8 to 9:30 so that I know that I can get my kids ready in the morning, drop them off, and then have time to commute to work, or the last bullet, make some time for self-care. I am a big Peloton person that I recently discovered over the past year and a half, and I really try hard despite, even if I work late or whatnot, I really try to make a little bit of time to get my little blue dot on the Peloton, just because that is my time for self-care. So if that means not starting meetings till 9:30 so that I can do a 15-minute, bike class or yoga class or something like that, I really am protective of my time, and because that will help me get through my work and be a better person at work and at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to carve those moments out for that self-care and the reinvigoration. We got a question here from one of the attendees about reoccurring meetings that maybe are no longer necessary. How can you gracefully exit those unnecessary reoccurring meetings? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I think depending on your relationship with the meeting organizer, having that discussion with them, I know we've had these meetings on the calendar for a while, and it depends on if it's a big group meeting or maybe even a one-on-one meeting. Again, transparency, communication, I think is really important, or maybe your role has shifted a bit. So the original reason why you are attending that meeting, may no longer hold true. So again, just being brave enough to have that conversation, and again, taking back your time, taking control of your time, maybe offering some suggestions of maybe there's someone else on the legal team that is better suited for that particular project or recurring meeting. But just feeling, again, having the confidence to have that conversation with the meeting owner, I think makes a lot of sense. Ashlyn?
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think, one of the things that I've done in the past is ask like, why did you invite me to this meeting? Like, what is it that you're hoping that I bring to the table as part of this conversation? And it might be that there's some misalignment in what they're looking to get out from you as an attendee as to like what your role is. Maybe someone else is better suited, like you said, Lon. And so just kind of having that open dialogue is just so key. Yeah. Lon, do you like to schedule intentional calendar time? Like, is there anything that you do to manage your calendar to help prevent burnout for you?
Um, I think again, just blocking times as we've noted, really being intentional about the meetings that I'm saying yes to, questioning some of the meetings. There have been a couple of meetings. You know, I just joined Connect RN. I'm the first general counsel they've had. I am getting a lot of meeting requests because, believe it or not, everyone is really, really excited to, to have a lawyer on staff. But sometimes it's like, well, what is the purpose of this meeting? Or maybe I could just answer the question via Slack or via an email. And so again, I think just being really, really intentional and definitely making time, as I noted before, for that self-care. That to me, I try to get that done in the morning again, which is why I block my calendar until 9:30. That to me makes me feel like a zillion times better, and it makes me feel like I have done something for myself. I remember even, I think last week, I am commuting into work. As you can see, I'm in my new office building. And so having 45 minutes, commuting into work every day is something that I didn't have before when I was working from home, when I worked at HubSpot. And so I have to be really intentional. I only had 15 minutes, but I really still wanted to do something for myself. And I got on the bike, and Cody Rigsby, one of the Peloton instructors, was like, okay, if you only have 15 minutes, it's still something. And it made me feel so much better because yes, it's
Yeah.
only 15 minutes, but honestly, it really just made me feel a zillion times better. So if you can just find, 5 minutes to do like a meditation, or 5 minutes to just go walk outside, scheduling those things and using Slack to displaying when you're eating lunch, when you're taking a break. I think all of those things are really, really helpful tips.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I have learned about myself over my career is that I do certain tasks better at certain times of day as well. So I tend to do a lot of transactional contract reviews, and I tend to be best at that in the morning and then like mid-afternoon. And so I try to be really intentional about my calendar scheduling so that I can have as much free time in chunks as possible earlier in the morning or during that time in the afternoon where I'm most focused, and that's just where when I work best for that type of task, and then rescheduling other meetings around that. And then
Mhm.
in real life, my light went off. So uh, sorry, got a little darker in here. I'll be right back, Lon.
Um, one tip that I have that's not on here, and it could be a little bit of my OCD, but I do color code my calendar, which I find is actually very, very helpful. So I don't go crazy on the color code, but if I have a one-on-one meeting, that's like one color, and if I have a meeting with an external person, that's another color, and then if I have meetings or things I need to do, like remember to bring the Girl Scout snack to the Girl Scout meeting, for my daughter. That's like more personal items because I kind of live and die by my work calendar. I find that visually it's just very helpful because like if I can just look and say like, oh, okay, no external meetings today. Maybe I can wear my hair in a ponytail or like or I have a bunch of one-on-ones that are concentrated. Like maybe I move those a little bit around so that I'm just not in like 6 back-to-back one-on-ones. It I find that it's just really helpful visually, without looking at every single
Yeah.
meeting title to see what I have on my plate or what's on my plate for the day. So that's, something you can maybe start doing if you like to color code things.
I also like the color code as well, and I definitely hear you on that, on the things that you need to do on the personal front and things you need on the work front. I actually have it's probably like a 3 foot by 3 foot whiteboard that is outside of the kitchen at my house, just so that I can share my schedule. I can know my kids' schedules, and like we have a nanny who comes and helps watch the kids during the day, and everyone's on the same page, and I color code by kid. So I totally hear you on that. It's great.
You need the
Yeah.
skylight calendar, Ashlyn.
I don't know what that is, but I'll have to Slack you after. Reach out. I'm going old school with
Move
that.
on to the next
Or
slide.
yes, let's move on. All right, so PTO vacation, a lot of companies today seem to be trending towards unlimited vacation time. And I think one of the things that I've had to learn in my career once that was something that I had at companies I worked for was just being really intentional about that vacation time and being aware of what vacation you've taken and what you haven't so that you can block time moving forward. Lon, do you want to talk a little bit about how you you think about PTO?
Yeah, I definitely think like one thing I try to model for my teams and where I'm at is like vacationing loudly. Not I've been in companies where my bosses have never taken vacation, and so you know to lead by example for those of you who are in legal leadership positions, vacation loudly because your team will look to you as an example. And so if you're not taking vacation or if you're not taking time off or if you're not focusing on not getting burnt out and self-care, then your teams aren't going to either. And then it's kind of like an endless cycle of who can work more hours and get burnt out the more quickly. So I put
Yeah.
my PTO on my calendar. I use sorry, well, there's a lot of HubSpot plugs today, but I love using the HubSpot has an out of office generator. I think it's like literally www.ooogenerator.com, and you can put in where you're going, the dates, and it spits out like these really fun out of office messages that like I have definitely gotten responses like that's the best out of office message I've gotten. And so I'm not going to hide taking vacation because I want to set a good example for my team and my peers within the company. Putting PTO on the calendar. And the third bullet here, I'm constantly asking my team, when are you going to take time off? Or I've noticed you haven't taken a lot of time off lately. You've been working really hard. You should take like this Friday coming up, or is there an upcoming vacation? So again, just trying to lead by example and thinking about your team and their well-being as well. How
Yeah,
about you?
I have, yeah, totally agree with all of that. I think, for me in the roles I've always had, end of year or end of quarter can tend to be a busier time of year. And so in the past, when managing a team, like that's something that I check in them with them regularly, right? As we're heading into that busy season before it's even started. What time do you have scheduled? Even if it's not a full day off, like, do you have anything planned to recharge during that day? And being really vocal and transparent about what you're doing. And, personally for me, one of the things that I think has worked well is being transparent, not just about time off for a vacation perspective, but just also like when there's life things that happen during the workday. Like, for example, my daughter has Friday shares on Fridays once a month. And that's, early in the morning and it's from 8 to 9. And so a lot of folks might not ever know if I'm there or not, but I like to be very intentional about communicating that because it is something that I want folks on my team or folks that I work with to know, hey, like we all have lives outside of work and it's important to go and spend the time going to your daughter's share when she's presenting on her favorite sea animal or whatever it might be, right? Those are important times in the personal front, and so balancing that and being communicative about that, I think is key. Anything, I noticed there's a volunteer days here. Is there, as a tip, is that something that, you do frequently with your teams or more on a personal front?
Yeah, so this is an idea that I have done in the past when I worked at Sapient. We had like a great legal team program where I think maybe 2 or 3 times a year we would all, take the day off from doing legal work and going to, a local kitchen or homeless shelter to help, give back to the community. And I thought that was, kind of a great way, A, to give back to the community, but also to spend time with your teammates outside of work and really engage with them. And so, maybe you could propose something like that within your own organization as both, team building activity, pro bono kind of a volunteer activity, which would be fantastic. I think that is another great way to use, a flexible PTO day.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great examples. Um, we did get a question here. Do you have any thoughts about how to work with those bosses who don't take vacation and prefer the culture of just not taking time to recharge?
Yes, so that is difficult. And what I would say is that everyone, is their own leader and everyone should be feel empowered to be in charge of their own, time and career. Um, And that's where I would say, I like having that conversation, and I am planning on taking this time off. Depending on, again, your relationship, maybe your boss doesn't think they can take a day off because they, the fourth bullet, they can't lean on the team. And so maybe by opening up that conversation, you could even see if there are things that you could potentially take off your boss's plate to help make them feel that they are in a position to take that time off. And so you never know where that, again, transparent, open, honest conversation will take you. It will take a lot of courage, but I think that all of us should feel empowered to take control of our own profession, our own lives and careers and work-life balance. And whatever we need from other people, I think we should, again, be courageous enough to be honest about that, and try to have that conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've worked for bosses who maybe um, have tend to reach out more frequently during a vacation is what I'll say. So you'll be off and you'll get a message. And I think one of the things that I took away from one manager I had in the past was being intentional about communicating when you want to be engaged or when they want you to reach out if you're on vacation. It goes both ways. And so I really try to be intentional when I'm out of the office with both my leadership um, and my team that I'm managing as well, to say like, hey, here's the stuff that I want you to reach out with if it comes up. Otherwise, I'll be back and we'll chat then. Here's who to go for if you need support. And so really just trying to set that upfront transparency around what is important to your boss or to you during that time off, and when you may need to or want to be engaged. I think that really helps if that's something that works for you.
Yeah, I think building on that, for both PTO and leaves of absence, for example, like if you are coming up on a upcoming parental leave or another extended leave of absence, Ashlyn, I think, was definitely the queen of creating playbooks so that, if she wasn't there, there was this amazing playbook that, her team or others on the broader legal team could follow and kind of see how a process would run without, again, having to bother Ashlyn on vacation. I'm noticing that, as I build out processes and procedures here at Connect, it's not just, what's in somebody's head, or, in my case, I don't know anything about the company yet, and I'm still learning that. And so encouraging my team and others within the business to like build out those policies and processes via a playbook, because I don't want to use the hit by the bus example. I want to use if you win the lottery the next day and you're not going to come back to work, like how is
Yeah.
your team going to function? And so again, if you're in the position to help, educate other, I know that many of you might be, solo practitioners or kind of the only member of the legal team, but I mean, that's even better, like building out some sort of a playbook or process so that, when you are able to hire somebody, or if you leave the company and go elsewhere, people kind of have something to go to and a resource to go to, either during your PTO or during your leave of absence or when you win the lottery and don't need to work ever again.
Yeah, no, you know me, I love a good playbook or a well-documented outline of who should go to whoever for for support while I'm out. And so I definitely, I think that that's something I took away in past roles more on the operations side, where I sat in operations seats and ran into the scenario where someone was on vacation and I had that moment of, oh, I'm covering them and I'm not entirely sure what to do. And I think sometimes for, vacations, if you feel like your team is not able to step into the shoes to support, or if you feel like you're concerned that maybe you don't have the full picture, building those out can really alleviate some of the concerns for folks who may be hesitant. So I'm a big proponent of that. All right, should we head on to the next slide?
Yes.
One. Yeah.
Yeah, and so kind of building on that playbook discussion and building about processes and kind of not being the single point of failure, I think, helping to define your team's priorities can also help you battle burnout and take back your time, because if you and your team have like very, very clear priorities, that, you have set both within your team, across, if you have a broader legal team, across the broader legal team, and then, across the business, then, hopefully you are not burning the midnight oil, and are focused on like some key priorities and moving towards those. Um, it's very difficult to, in a legal where we're the service provider and we're kind of reacting to the business and, any of their needs. I know that sometimes it's harder to develop, maybe those priorities, but having, you know, having some sort of an offsite at the beginning of the year, or onsite. Now that everybody's offsite, I feel like the onsite is a new offsite. So coming into the office, gathering together. I did this with my prior teams, just to come together and kind of set expectations for what the goals are for the year and what the priorities are for the year, so that you're not kind of doing everything and anything and everything. And the last bullet on here is like really setting clear omissions. I think, because what don't you want to do? I mean, even coming here, there are so many things that I can do and should do and need to do, but I'm only one person. And so I'm going to have to set very, very clear priorities that I will stick to, that I've communicated with the business, as well as, clear omissions for future priorities, or future years. Ashlyn, how about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's all, and you brought up a good point about our business partners sometimes having priorities that require legal support or engagement. And so one of the things that I like to do anytime I join a new role, I did this when I joined Link Squares a few months back. I went out and I had what was basically a listening tour. Went to understand my business partners' priorities, their objectives, what they were looking to achieve. And then, I circle back with them periodically. And it's is important to communicate what you are doing. Um, like that's great, but it's almost more important at times to communicate what you're not doing and why, and providing that level of transparency, explaining the timeline to get it done, how you're planning to approach it, and then asking if there's a reshuffling that's needed for what you're working on. But I think that was some feedback I got on earlier in my career from a prior manager who was like, "It's great to hear what you're working on. What aren't you doing that we've talked about?" And so that's something that I've really taken with me, is so that I can adapt and mold to what the shifting priorities might be for both my team or my business stakeholders.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just going to read the question off in the chat.
Excellent.
So, how have you set clear boundaries with business stakeholders so that you can balance your professional and personal life without risking political capital? I can start
Yeah, go ahead.
quickly. And this is a very timely question because I'm doing this right now. Again, being the first lawyer within this rapidly growing, tech startup, there are a lot of things to do. But having a very clear discussion with my CEO, like showing him some quick wins, but then having a very clear discussion of my priorities and what I'm able to do, being one person, again, without trying to like burn the midnight oil, and setting like very clear omissions, but having that be a conversation. So here's how I'm thinking about kind of like my next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I realize like some of you have already been in your organization for longer, but even if it's we're kind of at the beginning of the year, here are my priorities for over the next quarter, over the next couple of months, on how I'm going to support your team. Like let's have a discussion about it. Are there other things that you would want me to prioritize over this? Or here's why I'm prioritizing these for XYZ reasons. I know we've discussed B, C, and D in the past. Those are, and just again, communication, you can see a theme, communication, transparency, and just making sure you're getting on the same page, because the misaligned, having expectations that aren't aligned is where every single argument comes, or disagreement, or kind of comes from, whether it's both professional or personal. So just communicating and getting aligned on the same page, and having an understanding of where your business partner is coming from versus like where you're coming from, and meeting in the middle is again, I think, just the best approach to take. What are your thoughts, Ashlyn?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that having the conversation is so important. And all of what you said, I think the only thing I would add is just the adaptability piece of it. And I think sometimes I had worked in a role a while back in my career, and at one point my manager looked at me and he's like, everything you've started ends up getting reshuffled and you move to something else. And I recognize you haven't finished, like you have not taken to completion something in a little while. So let's talk about like a small win that we know will happen before maybe priorities shift, or you have to move in a different direction. And I think that's important too, not just for yourself and kind of working with your business partners, but when things do need to shift out or adjust, is just creating that space to have those conversations. Um, you know, here's what I've worked on. Maybe we haven't finalized this. We've shifted. Here's why. Is there something that we can do that is sometimes what folks call a lower hanging fruit, right? Maybe has a high impact still. And I think that that's something that I've taken with me. Awesome.
Agreed.
All right. So technology to stay ahead. I think, Lon knows I am a big advocate of technology, and using technology to optimize your team's time and efficiency. And so, obviously here at LinkSquares, we're a legal technology company and we have a CLM and we use our own software, right? We use that on a day to day. And I think that it has enabled me to be more successful coming in and getting up to speed with the team, understanding kind of how to approach certain requests. And then at busy times, like at end of year, it has really just empowered me to take back my time in ways by making the certain tasks easier, right? Like sharing contract back with my business partners, communicating with them through the tool. All of those things have really opened up and optimized my time so that I can do some of the other things that we've talked about. Maybe it's priorities, discussions, or listening tours to align on your enablement. Um, Lon, have you any experience with using technology to stay ahead?
Um, I'm kind of going back to the whole scheduling and making, vacationing loudly and everything, just making sure you're using your tools like, your out of office
Yep.
message, or, using emojis or messages on Slack, when you're going to walking the dog or driving to work, or, like running an errand or something like that, just using those communication tools to make sure that you're messaging to your stakeholders, like just a little bit more about your day. So they're not, if you're out on a quick dog walk, you're not getting a Slack, because hopefully if they see that little emoji, they'll probably wait to Slack you. Um,
Yep.
I, it's, as I get older in my age, I realize that I'm probably not as technologically advanced as a lot of the youngins out there. But that being said, like I am really trying to make use of project management tools like Asana, or like a Trello board, or using Google Docs for collaboration, asynchronous collaboration versus like sending a red line Word document back and forth. Again, I know that many companies might not leverage some of these tools. So, that being said, like I understand that, but using, to the extent you can, help to automate some of your functions by, reaching out to Ashlyn at the LinkSquares team, or other project management or workflow tools. I think like just understanding how they could help you in your day to day and create efficiencies, then potentially you may get the budget for those tools.
Yeah, and I think there's just so many value adds to utilizing technology to stay ahead. But it also, having a tool can give you information about what you or your team are working on, with data to help you make some actionable decisions, to think about what you want to lead into. We had the question earlier about setting clear boundaries, tools that are going to give you more insights to maybe it's how many contracts we reviewed or how many requests for NDA review we got last month, right? Like those are the types of information that you can glean from a technology provider, and take that back to your business partners and take it back to your management team or just the team that you're managing to kind of let them know here's how we've spent our time. Are there ways that we can lean in and optimize the processes or systems that we're using? Are there things that we can do to best support our business partners, whether it's creating a new template, or anything of that nature? So I do think that there's just a lot of opportunity to rethink how things are operating through the tools and the data that you can derive from them. That kind of gets back to that point of trying to avoid burnout and getting you to a space where you're optimizing your time and you're able to feel like you're stepping back to recharge, whether it's for that quick coffee break or for the walk around the block, whatever it is for you in that moment.
Yeah, definitely. One thing to add here is, for the folks that are core legal folks, a lot of us have been doing things like redlining Word documents or whatnot. And unless you're in like a tech company or another company that has a lot of these technology tools that you can leverage, you might not even know where to start. So I think having conversations with colleagues, folks in your network on like what tools and technology they're using. Also talking to, let's say, maybe your business partners on the engineering team or even the finance team and how they're leveraged, or even the sales team, like how they're leveraging technology within their own teams to kind of move faster and things like that. Because again, until Ashlyn came to HubSpot, I think like my practice was very your typical redlining Word documents and going back and forth and saving things, and there wasn't a lot of technology to help advance my work and make it more efficient. And Ashlyn and her fellow legal operations colleagues like really opened up a lot of just a whole new world for me as far as legal technology and efficiency tools.
That's awesome. No, I definitely think there's a lot to be added, and particularly as we think about burnout and optimizing teams. So just to move on, let's talk about that toolkit, that steps to beating burnout, and some of the things that we've chatted about already today. Just to run through them, it's really learning from past experiences, like understanding what it is that is specific to you that helps you identify that maybe you need to step away and take some of that a rest and recharge moment, right? Like take some of your time back. Saying no to non-essential meetings, clearly defining staff and team priorities, removing redundant meetings and having an agenda and always putting people first. And then just to move on from that, it's using that PTO technology, and then changing your perspective. And I think this last one's really interesting, I'll say for me, and I think I'm curious your thoughts on that, Lon, just on that changing your perspective piece of the toolkit. Anything that you have found that's worked for you?
I think, again, just going back on that communication and transparency, like understanding, maybe the business priorities or what's making, this project or, your workload feel like such a rush, and just kind of trying to communicate that with your business partner, like whether it be priorities or, taking time off and what to expect. Just kind of getting into their shoes again by communicating with them will help change. I think help to change your perspective. And the other, this is very much a cliche, but like no one's going to remember you for like how much you worked or how much you burned the midnight oil. And so if you can, if you can take back that time to focus on, a better work-life balance or self-care or, just doing things that ultimately will make you a happier person and therefore more willing to contribute, more meaningfully or in a different way, or engage in a different way at work than, being upset or mad or whatever. I think just change, both changing your perspective, changing your mindset, I think should really help you. I mean, it has helped me a ton. I still have some workaholic tendencies, but I really have tried to take my own advice here and employ a lot of the techniques. Um, and I'm very, very like proud of myself for kind of putting self-care and making time for my little blue dot on the Peloton every single day. I get really mad at myself when I don't hit a day, even if it's just like a 5-minute meditation. And I know that's really hard to do. Speaking from someone who never, ever, ever, ever worked out before, it just, I think again, just do it. Just change, try to make time for yourself, and hopefully that will help you battle the burnout.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think from a change your perspective, one thing I think about a lot is that um, there was a talk that I attended once, and someone said something to the effect of like, having folks working at after hours, or what are your perceived after hours, is not necessarily them burning the midnight oil. And it's all about seeking to understand and changing that perspective. And I think that that's one thing that I've tried to really be intentional for myself, but also for other folks, which is, you know, with part of enabling folks to take back that time, take back that calendar, you might not have full visibility into what they're doing. And so the perspective of someone's working really late, it's after hours, they must be burning out, might not be accurate, because maybe they took some time in the morning to get that blue dot on the Peloton, or to go to their daughter's Friday share, whatever it is that's going to fill their cup up, and they're electing or choosing to modify how they show up in the day, of course, if it works for your team and in your role. And so one of the things for battling burnout, and just when I think of from a management perspective, I like to have that open dialogue to understand, like seek to understand, like, are you getting burnt out? Are you using this time in a way that, so that you could do something earlier in the day, and having those conversations? And I think that's something that I think about a lot, for perspective, because no one size fits all.
Yeah, definitely. I think to that end, I think stole this from you, where you have a footer at the bottom of your email that says, I'm sending this at a time that's convenient for me. Don't feel like you have to respond kind of if it's not convenient for you. I think a lot of people at HubSpot did that, which I thought was really fantastic. Another tool that we didn't mention before was, even if you are working at night, I know that I used to send emails at all hours of the night because I was working, and why not just get them out? But, now that I'm, both here as general counsel, but even at HubSpot as a legal leader, I try not to send emails at 9 p.m. at night, because, if someone's getting an email from me at 9 p.m. at night, like, they're going to check and feel like worried that they have to respond. And so I schedule
Yeah.
send quite a few emails, and again, just so that I'm not putting pressure on my team to feel like they have to respond, or that they have to work because I'm working. So, any little bit that you can help to put your people first, number 5, and be empathetic about work situations, to help them not feel burnt out, because I feel like it's just like an evil cycle that will build upon itself. So anything that you can do to model like great behavior will help your team and the broader business too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Lon. I think that it's just really important to do that. All right,
Um,
should we move to questions?
yes, Mary, any questions on the line?
I think if we want to answer a couple, we have some. Let me grab those for you. We have one here. What advice do you give to GCs on how to talk to their teams about burnout?
Yeah, and Ashlyn, I can start and feel free to
Yeah.
take this. I feel like we talked a lot about this already, a little bit, again, my advice would be to create the space and actually have like a direct conversation about it, be transparent, communicate about it. Also just, be vulnerable and share how you have experienced burnout yourself and ways that you're working to address it. For example, like all the tips you learned at this webinar. Just like we have mentioned about talking about PTO or taking PTO loudly, talking about burnout and being vulnerable and like a real person and helping your team see you as a relatable human, I think is a great first step. Ashlyn, anything to add there?
No, I think that's all right. I think that just having that open door of communication and being honest and authentic, I think is so important. So I do see we had another question that came in. How do you assign which tasks are going to be the priorities for your team? We spent a lot of time today talking about aligning to your priorities and really using that as a way to focus in on how to take back your time. Any suggestions, Lon, on kind of what you've done in the past to assign what your team's going to focus in on?
Yeah, I think, and we talked a little bit about this as well, just, scheduling those regular offsites or onsites with your team to help clearly define the team's roles and responsibilities. I mean, that's one thing that I want to do here. I do have a couple folks reporting into me that have been here for a couple, on the compliance side, who have been here for a couple more months, than me. And so they're already doing a lot of things. And just, I want to understand like what they're doing, what they're doing that they should be doing and should continue doing, what they're doing that they maybe shouldn't be doing because, again, they're kind of legal and compliance folks and, people are relying on them because they know they can get the job done, but it might not be, appropriate for their scope, or what we should be doing that we're not doing. And so it's almost like that start, stop, continue exercise, which I think is really fantastic. So if you can take a couple hours with your team to really prioritize those, both at the beginning of the year, maybe when the broader team is creating goals or the broader business is creating their objectives for the year, and then checking in on those every once in a while. And again, just making sure to be communicative about your omissions and, tracking those omissions and stating them and sharing them so that everyone's on the same page. Anything to add there,
Yeah.
Ashley?
No, all of those things I echo and totally agree. I think one of the things that has been a good exercise for me in the past has been taking a look at the items that I'm working on. And there's this general run rate list of work that you'll have as a day-to-day support for your role. But then there's these things that are maybe longer term initiatives, is actually identifying what I think the objective is that they align to for our company. So if our company has larger scale priorities or things that they're focusing on for that year, does the task that I have align to that? Do my business partners' objectives align with mine? And I think that's been really helpful for me in the past. I see we have a couple more questions here, but feel free to add them in the chat if you have any. We'd love to hear from more folks here. So do you foresee changes to the length of the work week? I know some companies are moving to a four-day work week model. So Lon, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I just want to say these are my views, or everything on this webinar is my view and not necessarily my company's view. But I would say, like, never say never. I mean, I think if you had, kind of thought 3 years ago that the future of work was remote, I think that most people wouldn't be commuting into the office every day. I think we all would have been like, yeah, right, and that's, would never happen. But I think as people continue to take charge for their lives and reach for a better work-life balance, I honestly, I wouldn't say that a 4-day work week is off the table, and I personally would love it. I think we discussed earlier, like many companies are already having kind of that 1 day per week where internal meetings are not encouraged, and so, seeing a lot of companies encourage people to work the schedule that fits their lives. So I feel like as long as you're getting the work done and are available to your team, just continue to take advantage of that flexibility if your company does offer it. And maybe make a no meeting day just for yourself, as as we kind of discussed earlier.
That's awesome.
Um,
Thanks, Lynn. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I think there's just one last question in the chat. It's what do you recommend as an approach to gently, respectfully approach senior team members about burnout? For example, would creating a shared space with reference materials and checking in with people to encourage them review items too passive or ineffective? Ashlyn, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that one of the things that I have done in the past is just going to senior team members or senior leadership and saying, hey, here's what is my perception, and approaching it from a conversation of my perception and how I'm personally feeling. And then how can we partner together to make sure that I'm still meeting all of the company's objectives, while not getting burnt out, and having in my back pocket maybe some information around burnout or suggested strategies based on either what we've discussed here or articles that you find or read. I think that's been really helpful. But I find that going with that approach of here's my perception, here's how I'm feeling, opens a door to that communication, rather than like, it might get perceived a little differently than like I'm feeling burnt out. Like come with recommendations, come with suggestions, and provide some actionable proposals that they can discuss and partner with you.
Yeah, I don't know if the slides will be available to the meeting attendees afterwards, but you can be like, hey, I just attended this hopefully hopeful webinar on ways in-house counsel can address burnout. And one of the presenters was like, you need to talk about this and, create space for it. And so, kind of offering to spearhead that, just as Ashlyn had said, and, offering like recommendations and tips, I think would be really great. And it would show that you're, thinking outside the box and contributing to the overall health of the team. I mean, when isn't that a win? So, I would definitely encourage it. And I think it shows that you're really committed to the team and the well-being of the team, and hopefully you can help lead one of the conversations and share some of the tips that you learned today.
Yes, and we have confirmed the slides will be available for attendees, so
Great.
you'll have them. That's great advice. All right, well, thank you, Lon, so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I have really, really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks, Ashlyn. I always love chatting with you, and this was, it's personally one of my favorite topics to talk about. And thanks to all the HubSpot people who are here as well. It was great to see your names on the list and questions you asked. And have a wonderful day, everyone. And definitely take control of your lives and your work-life balance, and hopefully you learned some helpful tips today to do so.
All right. Thank you, LinkSquares, for presenting.
Yes, thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.